51. Gryph awoke with a start. His body was sore and his mouth parched. He coughed and hacked as a set of hands helped ease him up. His eyes opened to see a haze of motion and shapes. He blinked and muttered, and finally the world came into focus. Ovrim held him and smiled down. "You okay?" I feel like total shit." "You look like it," Ovrim said with a grin. He helped Gryph up into a sitting position. "Wick?" Ovrim grinned and moved aside. A few paces away, Tifila was forcing a health potion down Wick's throat. As expected, the gnome was grumbling at all the fuss. I'm fine, he said, pushing her away. Tifila smacked him lightly across the face, and his eyes darted up in indignation. "That's for being the stupid hero," Tifila said. She smacked him again. "And that's for almost leaving me alone." She drew her hand back again, and Wick flinched. Instead of another smack, the pretty gnome eased down and kissed Wick on the lips. "And this is for coming back to me." "Always," Wick said. Zeg jumped down from his perch on the back of the Barrow King's throne and landed lightly on Tifila's shoulder. He curled his tail around her neck and nuzzled her. Tifila smiled up at the imp and scratched it behind the ear. "Great, you're still here," Wick said with a frown. Zeg smacked Wick across the face. "That for being stupid hero!" Wick's shock was such that he didn't see the imp's second smack either. "That for leaving Zeg!" the imp said. Zeg then leaned in. "And this?" Wick grabbed the imp by the neck. "You kiss me, and I'll send you back to the Tonic realm permanently." Zeg frowned and crossed its arms in a teen girl pout. "Zeg only joking. Stinky blue hair wishes Zeg won't kiss him." He jumped back up on Tifila's shoulder. Gryph exchanged grins with Ovrim before looking down on Wick. He extended a hand, helping the gnome to his feet. Wick gave him an abashed smile of thanks. Gryph gave him a nod that said all the gnome needed to hear. "So, it's over?" Tifila asked, clutching to her man. "It's over," Gryph said with a nod. "Going to explain what happened in there?" Ovrim asked. "Over a very large beer when we get out of this hellhole," Wick said. Behind them, a clatter of bone said otherwise, as the Barrow King's skull shook. A white glow grew from the depths of its empty eye sockets and flared. The skull floated upwards and gazed down on the group. Ovrim was the first to move, swinging his crimson saber towards the skull. Right before it impacted, Gryph's spear parried the blow. Ovrim looked at Gryph in shock. "Wait," Gryph said. He also held a hand out to Tifila, who had pushed Wick behind her and emblazoned her hands with white life magic. Wick lightly grabbed Tifila's wrist and eased her palm down. Both companions stared at them as if they had gone mad, but they held their attacks. Satisfied that he had bought some time, Gryph turned his attention back to the skull. "Whoa, this is really weird," the skull said in Simon's voice. The skull hovered off-kilter as Simon adjusted to his new existence. After a few moments, it balanced, and a spectral essence flowed from the skull. and Simon made an ethereal body in the image of his long-dead physical one. "You okay, kid?" Gryph asked. Before Gryph could answer, a rumble shook the barrow. It was centered on Simon.
Uh, what is happening to me?"
Simon's skull began to glow and burn from inside, and the undead kid began to scream. Gryph ran to him, shielding his eyes as he approached, but something stopped him, and then began to push him back. Ovrim, Wick, and Tifila all prepped weapons and spells, but then a wave of energy exploded from Simon's skull. "Is the Barrow King back?" Gryph thought in alarm. The wave knocked them all to the ground and flowed through the solid rock of the chamber and up into the barrow. The wave disappeared, and the group got back to their feet. Once again, Gryph held up a hand, halting their attack. "Kid, what was that?" Gryph asked.
"Whoa!"
Simon said, and looked from his hands up to Gryph, and smiled. "You okay, kid?"
"I think so. This is a little weird. Feels like my old body, but much, much more. I can feel—"
He looked around, but his eyes seemed to be looking past the stone walls of the chamber.
"This entire place." "You can feel the barrow?" Wick asked. "I am the barrow," Simon said. Then his mouth turned into a frown. "What?" Gryph asked, nervousness creeping into him. "This place needs a serious redesign and better tenants."
Gryph and Wick grinned and laughed. Ovrim and Tifila exchanged confused glances, but both eased back on their attacks. "Somebody please explain what is going on," Ovrim said. Wick took his friends aside and explained. Gryph held his palm out to Simon, who placed his spectral hand up against it. Warmth flowed into Gryph's body. Simon smiled, and then wandered off, exploring his new home, his new body. Gryph walked away from his friends and sat against the wall. Prompt alerts had been flashing at the corner of his vision since he had woken up. He brought them into focus. "You have earned 120,000 XP for slaying the Barrow King. You have earned 45,000 XP for slaying Dread Knight times 10. You have earned 55,000 XP for slaying Thieves of the Grey Company times 3. You have earned 150,000 XP for completing the quest Cleanse the Barrow. You have earned 50,000 XP for completing the secret quest Simon's Second Chance. You have reached level 11, 12, 13, and 14. You have 24, 20 base plus 4 bonus, unused attribute points. You have 4 unused perk points. You have reached level 13 in Air Magic. You have reached level 6 in Earth Magic. You have reached level 5 in Thought Magic. You have reached level 25 in Soul Magic. You have reached level 11 in Staves Spears. You have reached level 8 in Thrown Weapons. You have reached level 12 in Light Armor. You have reached level 10 in Dodge. You have reached level 8 in Stealth. You have reached level 15 in Analyze. You have reached level 11 in Perception. Gryph's mind was at peace for the first time since he'd arrived in the realms. He was still worried about Bryn, but he knew that, at this moment, there was nothing he could do for her. "You need to take care of yourself before you can tend to others," he heard the voice of his long-dead mother say. To reward himself, he opened his character sheet and did some shopping. He still had the 5 points he'd saved from the last time he'd upped his attributes. He'd been so engrossed in battle, he hadn't even considered using the game hack. Well, that meant more to spend now. He decided to put 5 points into strength, constitution, dexterity, and intelligence. The last 4 he dumped into wisdom. Now that his spirit was available, he figured it was time to up the stat. He didn't know what an incantation was, but he hoped to find out soon enough. There was one last prompt blinking in the corner of his vision. He knew it was the Godhead, and while part of him was excited to see what amazing things the prompt would reveal, another part of him was terrified by the divine artifact. He took a deep breath and clicked the prompt. "Congratulations! Due to your completion of the legendary quest Cleanse the Barrow, in which you slew a legendary adversary, the Barrow King, your Godhead has evolved to Tier 2. The mote of creation inside you has increased in power. You are awarded plus 75 to health, plus 75 to stamina, plus 75 to mana, and plus 75 to spirit. You are also granted plus 5 to all attributes. All skills, including those learned in the next 24 hours, are increased by 2 levels, plus 1 divine perk points." Once again, Gryph was stunned. He was growing in power quickly, and he suspected that it would not go unnoticed. He decided to hold his divine perk point in reserve alongside his regular perk points. He needed to consult with Ovrim about the best way to proceed. The Zaidai seemed to be the most knowledgeable of the strange artifact that had bonded to him. Gryph inhaled and closed out his interface. He took a quick peek at his skill sheet. Magic skills, level, tier, 100% affinity in all spheres. Fire, 0, base. Air, 15, base. Water, 3, base. Earth, 6, base. Chthonic, 3, base. Empyrean, 0, base. Chaos, 4, base. Order, 0, base. Life, 3, base. Death, 0, base. Thought, 7, base. Ether, 0, base. Soul, 27, apprentice. Martial skills, level, tier. Unarmed, 7, base. Small blades, 7, base. Staves, spears, 13, base. Thrown weapons, 10, base. Stealth, 10, base. Light armor, 14, base. Dodge, 12, base. Knowledge skills, tier. Alchemy, 7, base. Harvest, 7, base. Analyze, 17, base. Perception, 13, base. Lockpicking, 7, base. Traps, 7, base. Perk points, 4. Divine perk points, 1. Gryph was wowed by the 100% affinity in every magic. That could sure come in handy. Now he just needed to find people willing to teach him. He suspected that magical knowledge was an incredibly valuable coin in the realms, and he doubted everyone would be as free with the knowledge as his companions in the Barrow had been. The need to survive made people do odd things. Gryph opened his character sheet. Gryph, level 14, High Elf, El Edrine, Deity, None, Experience, 452,303. Next level, 182,697. Stats: Health, 347. Stamina, 342. Mana, 325. Spirit, 280. Secondary stats: Morale. Attributes: Strength, 38. Constitution, 47. Dexterity, 47. Intelligence, 40. Wisdom, 24. Attribute points, 5. Gifts: Health regeneration, plus 25%. Mana regeneration, plus 25%. Night vision, 120 feet. Master of tongues, identify. Wick's tale ended by the time Gryph finished inspecting his interface. Ovrim walked up to Simon and chatted with him. Wick and Tifila were inseparable. Even Zeg seemed chipper as it gnawed on one of the Barrow King's arm bones. Gryph had to smile at the motley crew of companions he'd assembled around him. Is this what life in the realms will be like? He thought. If so, I could do worse. Not long after, Simon activated the archway, opening a portal to the outside world. Gryph was worried that the expenditure of energy would drain the spectral teen too much, but Simon said he had some ideas about how to sustain himself and fix up the Barrow. That's something Utserio never discovered, never could discover, Simon said. A willing soul is far more powerful than a consumed one. Give me a few weeks and you won't even recognize this place. Gryph promised to return when he was able and walked through the shimmering portal. The sensation was much more pleasant than the last several portals he'd walked through, and soon he felt a cool spring breeze blowing on his face. He stood in a grass clearing in the middle of an ancient forest. Beyond the trees were tall mountains. Birds chirped and flew in lazy circles. Insects buzzed. Life was everywhere. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. The smell of fresh air brought tears to his eyes. Somewhere nearby, he could hear a babbling brook. I will say one thing, Dinkwick Flintspanner. You sure know how to show a girl a good time, Tifila said. She hugged Wick fiercely as the gnome's body tightened before his head snapped back at his taller friends. So, Gryph began, a smile splitting his face. Don't say it, Wick grumbled. Gryph stifled a laugh but kept quiet. Your name is Dinkwick? Ovrim asked. Gryph erupted in laughter, to the horror of Wick. It's a family name, Wick said, head hung low. It's a good name, Ovrim said, with no sense of irony or humor. A strong name. A warrior's name. Gryph couldn't help himself as he laughed out loud. Tifila smiled, and Zeg barked what may have been a laugh. Ovrim looked confused. Am I missing something? Overham asked. Even Wick had to smile at that one.
You really aren't from around here, are ya?
I am confused, Overham said again. I'll explain it over those beers, Gryph said, clasping the tall Zai-Dai by the shoulder. The group walked down a small trail, laughing and smiling. Then the world shifted, and Gryph was somewhere else.